Hi, I'm Gordon. We're at Stanhope Gardens. I've got a 500 metre, a little bit over 500 square metre block of land, and I'm in the process of rebuilding my house after a number of years. Basically, when we did the rebuild, we incorporated a number of things that, in big picture, sort of helps the overall environmental footprint.
Stanhope Gardens resident Gordon Lewis is currently renovating his home with sustainable materials. He has also set up an aquaponics gardening system in his backyard, which will allow him to breed fish or other seafood creatures and grow his own fruit and veg. It's pretty incredible to see.
And because I'm still in the build phase, I haven't actually put any productive fish, but the intention is that in winter, which it is now, I'll be able to put trout in here because trout doesn't mind the cold weather, and therefore I can, and they have a very short growth period before they can get to table or plate size. So the intention is that I'll have a season of trout.
Gordon's interest in sustainability started when he was young and has grown ever since, but he's had to adapt.
My desire when I was a teenager and going was to go onto the family property in Western Australia and become a farmer. I'm a qualified wool classer, and we had 6,000 acres with 20,000 sheep in WA. That was my big plan. The girl I fell in love with doesn't like flies. Farms have lots of flies, so I ended up hanging out in suburbia, and I have this desire to be hands-on in that sort of space, and this is just how it's manifested.
For Gordon, the act of living sustainably comes naturally, and he doesn't see why it should be any different for anyone else.
Custodianship. We don't own this planet. We merely hold it in trust for our next generation. So the idea is that we take care of our houses with the intention of actually being able to sell it one day and not lose money on it. Why don't we have the same attitude towards our planet, that we're going to hand it on to somebody else? Why are we depreciating its value instead of adding value to it?
Nevin Sweeney is the president of Permaculture Sydney West and has been living sustainably for 40 years.
And so we've been busy putting all of our bits and pieces. So we had a solar system I'd put together 30 years ago before it was cool. We had water tanks 35 years ago before they were a popular thing. Growing our own food has always been a thing for us. But looking at things like our energy consumption and water and the waste we produce and all that sort of stuff as well.
Through his involvement with Permaculture Sydney West, Nevin works closely with a number of Western Sydney councils in developing sustainable solutions and information to local residents. However, he does say that it would be more helpful and less confusing for Western Sydney residents if councils in the area cooperated with each other on their rules and regulations regarding sustainable practices.
I think there's a lot, particularly in the sustainability space, that could be harmonised throughout the councils. Their websites can be really good. They can have a whole stack of stuff on there, or they can be sort of a bit, not so crash hot.
Jason Twill has 20 years of experience of developing sustainable housing alternatives. He is currently in Europe, leading a delegation on a study of sustainable and equitable housing models in Berlin, Vienna and Zurich. He thinks that councils like Blacktown could learn a lot from Europe's sustainable housing models.
Yeah, there's a whole gap in the kind of industry jargon of sustainability and missing the messaging and, importantly, how we work with local communities and purchasers and renters on a deeper awareness on the values of sustainable buildings and sustainable lifestyles, and what that means for raising a family or being an elderly single person, and what that means for your health and well-being. That we can do a lot better at communicating and working with communities.
Gordon Lewis has been frustrated with the limited access he has had in acquiring sustainable alternatives whilst renovating his home.
There's a lot of technologies that are out in the big wide world that doesn't exist in Australia. So it's quite frustrating to not be able to implement a lot of stuff that is out in Europe and in North America, just simply because, for whatever reason, the market's deemed that it's not necessarily appropriate or not viable for having it here.
But despite these restrictions, Gordon considers Blacktown Council to be open-minded and forward-thinking when it comes to sustainable living.
Yes, they're more open to the idea and they're forward. They are looking for people who have a desire and they're happy to facilitate those things.